What if 80% of what you write down on your to-do list just didn't matter? Let that sink in. Seriously, what if 4 out of 5 things that you've got written down to do this week are just distractions or a waste of time? Most of us start the week with a long list, but we end up accomplishing only a fraction of what we set out to do. But what if I told you that a tiny handful of actions, things that really often take less than 10 minutes, are what actually create all the momentum in your business? Now, stick with me because in this episode of Weekly Momentum, I'm going to show you how to find those actions so you can stop being all busy and start being effective. So let's get in momentum. Hello and welcome to Weekly Momentum for Women in Business. This is your weekly dose of clarity, strategy, and of course, momentum. I'm the Get It Done Diva, and I believe that greatness is a habit, not a hustle. And for the past 20 years, I've been helping women in business make the CEO shift to increase profitability, create more time freedom, and go from doing everything themselves to instead building a business that runs better without them. Now, if you'd like to make the CEO shift too, fair warning, it's been described as mind-blowing. You'll find a link to access the free training in the description below. Now, let's jump into this week's juicy topic. What if 80% of your to-do list didn't matter? Do you know that feeling, the one where the week is a blur? I'm sure you don't know what I'm talking about, right? We write down 50 tasks. We get a little dopamine hit every time we check one of them off. Reply to 10 emails. Check. Post on Instagram. Check. Research a new microphone. Check. By the end of the day, our business, fundamentally, has it changed? Are we closer to our big goals? Does activity or busyness equal progress? Usually the answer is no. Over the years coaching hundreds of business owners, I started noticing a pattern, the real breakthroughs, the moments that led to landing a new client, doubling their income, or finally getting clear on a new direction or product for their business. They almost always came from the same handful of activities, 16 of them to be precise. Most of them take less than 10 minutes to complete, but the impact can last for weeks, months, or even years. And today, we're not going to go through all 16. But don't worry, I've got a fun way for you to get the full list in the description below. It's called CEO Bingo. Yep, I've turned those 16 breakthrough activities into a fun game of bingo just for you. So make sure you grab your bingo card below. Now, in this episode today, we are going to focus on breaking down the mindset behind those breakthroughs. And I'll share 3 powerful examples you can implement today to start making an impact right away. So why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we build these task lists, these prisons? It really comes down to 2 things: a fear of the unknown and a craving for certainty. It feels safe and productive to fill our day with small, easy-to-define tasks. It's predictable. I know I can answer 10 emails. I know I can schedule a social media post. What's scary? The big stuff, the hard questions, the things that actually grow your business. Things like define my ideal client or systematize my onboarding process. Those are huge. Those are a little ambiguous. And because we don't know where to start, we retreat to the comfort of the to-do list. And instead, we empty our inbox, we tidy our desk, or just send out another email to our list. I want to share a story from one of my clients. She told me, I remember this one week where I spent probably 15 hours redesigning my website banner. I changed the fonts, the colors, the images. I felt so busy and productive. And at the end of the week, my website traffic was the same. My revenue was the same. Nothing had changed. The banner was a comfort task that kept me from doing the scary work, reaching out to potential partners for a collaboration. Does that sound familiar to anyone here? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a comfort task like that, like your website that you've used to procrastinate on the real work. Now, in my book, Daily Momentum, I talk a lot about the P word, procrastination. It's actually not as big and scary as you think. When you really break it down, what it means is what I didn't do. So the next time you catch yourself saying in your head or out loud, I'm procrastinating or I procrastinated, I want you to do a retake and instead say, I'm not doing fill in the blank. And then instead of being the victim of some big, scary procrastination disease, you see it's simply a choice you're making not to do something. Sometimes that's all it takes to choose differently. The truth is, the things that create real results in our business, in our lives, are often a little ambiguous. They take courage and clarity, not the most time to do. And the things that take the most time are just busy work that keep us comfortable. So how do we break out of this? We need a mindset shift. Now, if you've been listening to Weekly Momentum for a while, you've heard me talk before about the 80-20 rule or the 80-20 principle, right? It was originally identified by Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto over 100 years ago when he noticed that roughly 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. Over time, people started noticing this pattern everywhere. About 20% of efforts often created about 80% of results. 20% of customers generate 80% of revenue for most companies. 20% of problems create 80% of headaches. And yes, often 20% of our actions create 80% of our results. The challenge is that most people understand the concept, but they don't know what their 20% actions are. So instead of giving you a vague principle today and saying, go figure out your 20%, I've decided to do all of the heavy lifting for you. So I took all of those years of coaching conversations, the breakthroughs, the observations, the patterns. And as I mentioned, I identified 16 breakthrough actions that consistently seem to create outsized results, not because they're complicated, because they're powerful. They're the kinds of actions that create awareness. And awareness is what changes behavior. And behavior is what changes result. They create momentum. Each of the 16 actions that are in the bingo game have 3 characteristics. First, they create clarity. So they might answer a question, remove confusion, or help you see something that you've been missing. Second, they might open doors. Maybe they create new opportunities, new conversations, new referrals, new ideas, or potential revenue. And third, they might build an asset for you, a system, a habit, a process, a piece of content, something that is going to continue working long after you've invested the time in completing the task. Notice what's not on that list. Doesn't have to be difficult. Doesn't have to take hours. It doesn't have to feel productive. Often it's fun. And it definitely doesn't have to be complicated. Out of the 16, some of the most powerful ones may only take you 5 minutes to complete. Because I know that you're busy, and if this is just too complicated, you're just going to get pulled into the daily grind before you can enjoy the benefits of these actions. So I want to share 3 examples directly from the bingo card, just to tease you, that demonstrate exactly what I mean. They're pulled directly from my list of 16, and you can try them this week that we're going to step into right now. One of the things that you'll notice on the bingo card, I know you're going to go download it, right? It's in the description below, is that the squares are grouped into 4 categories. So there's recharge, there's rewind, there's reset, and there's big frog. And that wasn't an accident, because creating momentum isn't just about taking action. It's about taking the right kinds of action at the right time. Recharge helps you create energy that you're going to need. Rewind helps you create awareness. Reset helps create clarity and direction. And the big frog helps you stop procrastinating and finally tackle the things that you've been avoiding, realizing that maybe procrastinating isn't a real thing. Because let's be honest, most procrastination is not laziness. It's perfectionism. It's overwhelm. It's not knowing where to start. That's why some of the biggest breakthroughs happen when we finally do the thing we've been putting off. So let's break down a little bit more. What makes these actions breakthrough actions? All right, first let's talk about clarity, right? Because one of the fastest ways that you can create momentum is to ask yourself a question, especially a question around a topic that you've been avoiding. And sometimes we have questions that we want to answer, but they're just too big and we need to break them into smaller bites. So when you get clear on that, you'll start to see figuring out what to do next gets a lot easier. You could do a lot in 10 minutes that can be unlocked when you ask yourself a really powerful question. It can eliminate hours of confusion. That is momentum that comes from asking a question. The next type of activity that you're going to find in the 16 actions are activities that are about filling up your tank and exposing yourself to new ideas. And that's why, for example, listening to a podcast is one of the bingo squares. Podcasts are one of my absolute favorite ways to recharge and reboot my thinking. I can feel stagnant and stuck or in a funk, and I can flip through the podcasts, listen to something, and completely feel different in 5 minutes. It's not because we need more information, but because sometimes we just need to hear a new perspective on something, a literal new voice saying the same thing to us, a new idea. It can change everything. And it might come in that we might get a different story that's revealing someone else's struggle with the same thing that we're going through, or like just one sentence that we hear in an audiobook or a podcast. That's all it takes. And so you'll find within the bingo card actions that you could take. And yes, I know a podcast is longer than 5 or 10 minutes, but when you're driving 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, or if you're just taking a little break in between your Pomodoros, 25-minute action bursts during your day, you could listen to 5-10 minutes of a podcast and have a huge breakthrough. I'm also a big believer that everything's always working out perfectly for us. So we're going to receive whatever we need, right? We're going to receive the information, the insights, the breakthroughs, the ideas. The doors will open that we're ready to walk through. And so it might very well be that you're just randomly going through YouTube or a podcast app or looking through your audiobooks and you just hear the right thing at just the right time. I know that's happened to you before. So when you put a little faith into what you're doing with these breakthrough actions as well, you're going to realize that you're going to receive exactly what you need when you need it. And it's so much better when you're listening to the podcast or the audio and allowing it to come through the sense of hearing with a really clear channel. And what I mean by that is don't do it while you're checking email or multitasking. Because let's be honest, when we do that, we're not really hearing it clearly. We might as well not be doing either of the things that we're doing. We really want it to soak in. We don't want to do it while we're multitasking. So you're better off actually listening to something for a short amount of time and just listening to it. I mean, I did mention driving, but even driving, it's better if could you just sit there for 10 minutes and listen to something? Really let it reverberate, really let it soak in, actually listen and ask yourself, what ideas are standing out? What do I disagree with, right? Sometimes you will hear things that are the opposite of what you want, and it'll help you move in a different direction. You could ask yourself, how could I apply this to my business? What conversations does this spark in my mind, right? It's like gas in your tank. One 10-minute little burst of concentrated listening to a podcast or to an audiobook can generate content ideas, marketing ideas, breakthroughs of conversations you want to have with your team members or systems you might want to create, revenue ideas. Never underestimate the power, and I love that I keep saying exposing yourself. Like, it sounds like you're gonna be running around naked listening, but that's not what I'm suggesting. Exposing yourself, exposing your eardrums is what I'm talking about to fresh thinking. That is going to create a breakthrough for you. Now, the third kind of activity that you'll find on the bingo card are the ones that are about actually implementing or doing something because they just challenge you to do a burst of action. And I find that often when you do that, you're going to realize that you don't need a lot of time to actually get stuff done, that you can achieve a lot in 5 or 10 minutes. Something as simple as like the challenge on one of the squares to build one system. Now, a system is really a pre-made choice that you can repeat again and again and again. Might be a checklist, doesn't have to be complicated. I know we can think of standard operating procedures and think, oh my gosh, a system, it's giving me a headache. The idea of putting that together, it feels like I need an entire manual, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. When we make these choices ahead of time and create systems around the activities that we do, the things that we keep doing over and over again, like sending the same emails, often we're replying in the same way, the same responses, or onboarding new team members or clients, it's the same. Social media posting, what's the way, the checklist of how to do that, or how you're doing your meetings and running the agenda. These are all things that we do again and again and again, but we can create a system around. You could pick just one thing and create a template you might think of. And and that's why the squares that are around implementation, like creating a system or actually doing something like reducing your expenses and really taking the action, are going to be fanned by the other two categories of tasks and create really like the trifecta effect. Most people know that they need to create systems. They've known for years, but it's the kind of thing that you put off. You're busy, you'll do it later, right? But when I challenge you, hey, you keep repeating the same task over and over again. This week, take 10 minutes and create a system for that. Over a year, that's hours and hours returned to you. Now, these 16 actions on the bingo card, they're so much more than just individual tasks to just knock off. They're going to make things easier for you going forward. They're going to help you build systems, reduce stress, reduce decision fatigue, and create time freedom. Some of them will help you recharge, some of them will help you rewind, and some of them will help you reset. And of course, you're going to find on there some big frogs that you can tackle. They all have one thing in common, though. They create awareness. And awareness is going to change your behavior, which is going to create the breakthroughs from these 16 powerful activities. You're starting to see that these activities are more than just about being busy. It's about making progress. Most of what's on our to-do list a lot of the time, as I mentioned at the beginning, is just comfortable distraction. The real magic, the real momentum comes from these small, powerful breakthrough actions that either create clarity, open doors, or build assets for us that will keep on giving back. We've talked about 3 different examples of types, like answering a specific question, listening to a podcast, getting new information, or creating a system or a template to simplify your work. But imagine what would happen if you did just one of those small actions every other day. By the end of the month, you'd have completed all 16 actions. You'd have more clarity and more assets than you've built maybe in the last 6 months. And instead of just being busy, you'd be operating on a completely different level. Now, I know you still are going to create a to-do list with other things on it. I'm just encouraging you, do these 16 actions, challenge yourself, play the bingo game so that you can also see the difference, the contrast between activities that are just busy work and the types of activities that create breakthroughs, assets, and continue to keep giving back to your business. Now, before we wrap up today, I want to walk you through, of course, the 4 steps we use every single week inside weekly momentum. And so there is step 1, which is rewind. Now, we've already been talking about this throughout today's episode. It's about looking back before you look forward, noticing what created results. So as you're looking back over the last week, this week in particular, I want you to keep in mind everything that we've been talking about today. Notice, what were the 20% actions? Did you have some pivotal actions, some powerful momentum actions of your own that you can identify? Were you doing any of the things that we've been talking around clarity or building assets or asking questions? What created results last week? What created stress? What gave you energy? What drained you? What activities actually moved things forward? And what's your comfort actions? What are those things that just kept you busy? Remember, the clues are already there if you're willing to look for them. And so as you're rewinding over the last week, make sure that you keep all of this in mind so that you can learn and grow from your own experience about what we're talking about today. So step 1 of the weekly momentum process is to rewind. Step 2 is to realign. And it sounds more complicated than it is. Really, it just means look at your goals for the year. Look at your goals for the next 90 days. Realign. Remind yourself where you're heading. Ask yourself what matters most as you're stepping into this next week. What is your biggest opportunity right now? What's a question? I've already told you I'm a huge fan of questions that you need to answer. What's a decision you've been avoiding? What are some of the big frogs? This is where you take in all of that awareness from the rewind and you use it to get back in alignment. And you can keep in mind really your bigger goals as you're asking these questions. So if you're asking yourself, what's my big frog? What's your big frog? Why are you procrastinating or not doing the actions that you need to move towards some of your bigger goals? When you take the time to realign, it's hard to avoid some of the big frogs that are right there in front of you. And you might actually end up eating a few of them this week. Step 3 of the weekly momentum process, of course, is plan. And that's where we create your weekly top 10. So we can create that fun scorecard and you can check in with how you're doing every week. It's not 50 things, it's not 30 things, it's 10 things. You're writing down the 10 most important things you'd like to accomplish this coming week. And I want you to do something different this week with your weekly top 10. I want you to grab the bingo card and I want you to look at it and choose 3 bingo squares. If you want to follow along with the rhythm of what we're doing this week, you can look at the calendar, but you want to choose 3 squares from the bingo card, just 3. Circle them, schedule them. Think of maybe which one scares you the most, which one you're most excited about, and which one feels easy. And put those down as 3 of the items on your weekly top 10. So now you only have 7 items that you get to come up with on your own. So 3 of your weekly top 10 can be from the bingo card. And I want you to really prioritize them. Because if you're intentionally investing in those actions, those 20% type actions that create results instead of getting trapped in all of the 80% of busyness and activity. And you know what's interesting that you might find? Those 3 items, those 3 bingo squares that you pick, they might create insights, choices, systems, assets, and momentum that will impact everything else on your weekly top 10. I love the synchronicity of things. Can you imagine doing those 3 things and it just creating so much momentum this week on your entire list? And step 4 of the weekly momentum process is where you plug in. Now, usually what I talk about here is about really blocking off your Pomodoros, your 25-minute time blocks on your calendar for specifically the items on your weekly top 10. Now, another way you can plug in as well is to plug into resources that are available to you. So often we're so busy that we're not leveraging a lot of the things that are right there in front of us. I've created little 2-minute or less videos for you on every single one of the 16 breakthrough actions that are on the bingo card. So when you download the bingo card, make sure you go to the community and you're going to see every other day you're going to be finding new videos that you can watch that you can plug into to give yourself a little bit more momentum. One of the biggest reasons people lose momentum isn't because they're not capable. You're smart, you're ambitious. It's because you get pulled back into the daily grind. The urgent crowds out the important. This challenge is going to help you plug in. Play CEO bingo, have some fun, bring your attention back to what matters. So this week, once again, you're going to step 1, rewind. You're going to step 2, realign, step 3, plan, and step 4, plug in. One of the things that I've learned over the years of planning is that success, it doesn't come from having the perfect plan in January. It comes from taking the time throughout the year to pause, reflect, and adjust with new information, and then move forward. And when we do that, I find that we can get reinvigorated throughout the year and bring in these new ideas without deviating too much from our targets. That's why I love this time of year. It feels really productive. It's a chance to celebrate what's working, let go of what's not, and get clear on what I want for the next half of the year or for the next 90 days. And I do that periodically throughout the year. So if you've been craving a little bit more of that clarity, focus, you want some momentum, or you just want some uninterrupted time to really think about your business, I'd love you to come and join me for the CEO Reset Weekend. Together, we'll use the brand new 90-day momentum map that I've been cooking up. And no, you have not seen this yet. Even if you're a raving fan, we're going to create a roadmap for the next 90 days. And we're going to track 3 key business metrics: profitability, down to the net's ass, and I'm going to show you how to do that so you can know your numbers, time freedom, and progress towards business growth and systematization. You're going to leave the weekend with fresh ideas, renewed energy, clear priorities, and a plan for the next 90 days ahead. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is just step away from the day-to-day to shake things up long enough to decide where you're heading next. So if you're ready for a reset, you can find the link below to the CEO Reset Weekend. You can join me for the whole weekend, or if you feel like you just need help with a strategic plan, you can come to the 90-day strategic planning workshop on the Sunday. If you want to find out more about either of those, you'll find the links below in the description. There's a handful of spots left. Thanks so much for hanging out with me in Weekly Momentum today. Now, I want you to complete one bingo square today. Take one small action, a breakthrough action that matters, and start paying attention to what happens next. Don't forget to get your bingo card using the link below. I'm Mariana Majeff, the Get It Done Diva, and I will see you next time on Weekly Momentum.